Have you been putting in the work all season, watering, feeding, and babying your tomato plants, only to end up with a disappointing harvest that does not match the effort you put in? That is one of the most frustrating feelings in gardening, and I hear about it all the time. But here's the good news. After growing tomatoes for over 2 decades, I can tell you that most of the time, the problem comes down to a handful of common mistakes that are easy to fix once you know what to look for. Today, I am walking you through 7 tomato growing mistakes that are flat out destroying your harvest. Stick around for number 6 because it is a mistake almost everyone makes without even realizing it. And I've got a bonus tip at the end that is going to help you grow the best tomatoes of your life. The first mistake that is destroying your tomato harvest is planting too early. I know how tempting it is. Spring arrives, the garden centers are packed with beautiful tomato transplants, and you just want to get them in the ground. But here's the deal. Tomatoes are warm season crops, and they absolutely hate cold soil. If you plant your tomatoes before the soil has warmed up to at least 60 degrees Fahrenheit, you are setting them up for failure right from the start. What happens is the roots sit in cold, wet ground and basically shut down. The plant stalls out, the leaves might turn purple from phosphorus deficiency because cold roots cannot absorb nutrients properly, and you lose weeks of potential growth. In some cases, a late frost can kill the plant outright, and then you are starting completely over. The fix is simple, but it requires patience. Wait until nighttime temperatures are consistently above 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and the soil has warmed to at least 60 degrees. In most areas, that means late spring. If you are in USDA zones 3 through 5, that could be late May or even early June. Zones 6 and 7, mid to late May, is usually safe. Zones 8 and above, you get a head start in March or April. Use a soil thermometer if you're not sure. They cost just a few dollars, and they take all the guesswork out of it. I know waiting is hard, but a tomato planted in warm soil will catch up to and surpass a tomato planted too early almost every single time. Your patience will be rewarded with a stronger, healthier plant that produces more fruit over the season. The second mistake I see gardeners making all the time is watering incorrectly, and this one has 2 parts that are both equally damaging. The first part is overhead watering, which means using a sprinkler or hose to spray water over the top of the plants. When you water from above, the leaves stay wet, and wet tomato leaves are an open invitation for fungal diseases like early blight, late blight, and septoria leaf spot. These diseases start as small brown or yellow spots on the lower leaves and then spread upward, eventually defoliating the plant and drastically reducing your harvest. The fix is to always water at the base of the plant, right at the soil level. A soaker hose or drip irrigation system is ideal, but even hand watering with a gentle stream directed at the roots works great. The second part of this mistake is inconsistent watering. Tomatoes need steady, even moisture. When you let the soil dry out completely and then flood it with water, the fruit absorbs moisture too quickly and the skin cracks. You have probably seen this before, those ugly splits on your otherwise beautiful tomatoes. Cracking is almost always caused by inconsistent watering. The solution is to water deeply and regularly, aiming for about 1 to 1.5 inches of water per week. Mulching around your plants with 2 to 3 inches of straw, shredded leaves, or wood chips helps tremendously because it keeps the soil moisture level steady between waterings. Once you nail your watering routine, you will see a dramatic improvement in both the health of your plants and the quality of your fruit. Number 3 on our list is a mistake that sparks a lot of debate in the gardening world, and that is not pruning suckers on indeterminate tomato varieties. Now let me explain what I mean because this trips up a lot of people. Indeterminate tomatoes are the varieties that keep growing and producing all season long until frost. They are the most common type in home gardens, and varieties like Better Boy, Cherokee Purple, Brandywine, and Sun Gold are all indeterminate. As these plants grow, you will notice little shoots that sprout in the V-shaped joint between the main stem and a branch. Those shoots are called suckers, and if you leave every single one of them, your plant turns into an enormous, tangled jungle of foliage. The problem is that all that foliage takes energy away from fruit production. The plant is putting resources into growing more leaves and stems instead of ripening tomatoes. It also reduces air circulation, which brings us right back to that fungal disease problem I just talked about. The fix is to prune at least the suckers below the first flower cluster. You can do this by simply pinching them off with your fingers when they are small. Some gardeners prune more aggressively, and some prefer a more hands-off approach. But at minimum, removing those lower suckers gives your plant better airflow, more energy for fruit production, and a cleaner structure that is easier to manage. If you are growing determinate or bush-type tomatoes, leave them alone because they are genetically programmed to stop growing at a certain size, and pruning can actually hurt their yield. But for indeterminates, a little strategic pruning goes a long way. Now, everything I have covered so far is a solid start, but it is really just scratching the surface. If you want the full system laid out step by step, I put together a guide called the 30-Day Kitchen Scrap Garden Protocol. It takes everything I know about growing food from kitchen scraps and organizes it into a day-by-day plan that anyone can follow. It covers which scraps actually regrow successfully and which ones people waste their time on. It walks you through the setup so you get it right from day one. And it gives you a complete 30-day calendar, so there is no guesswork involved. Click the link in the description right below this video. Just scroll down a little and you will see it. Or if you are watching on a television or a computer screen, take out your phone, open up your camera like you are going to take a picture, and hold it up to the QR code on screen right now. A little link will pop up at the top of your phone screen. Just tap that, and it will take you right to the guide. No typing, no searching. Either way works. I honestly think it is the best thing you can do for your garden this season. All right, let us get back to the mistakes because we have got 4 more big ones to cover. The 4th mistake that is killing your tomato harvest is planting too close together. I completely understand the temptation. You have limited space and you want to grow as many tomato plants as possible, but cramming plants too close is one of the worst things you can do for your overall yield. When tomato plants are squeezed together, their root systems compete for water and nutrients, their leaves overlap and block sunlight from reaching the lower branches, and the air circulation between plants drops to almost nothing. That lack of airflow creates a damp, humid microclimate that is absolutely perfect for fungal diseases. You end up with stressed, disease-prone plants that produce fewer and smaller tomatoes than they would have with proper spacing. The general rule is to give indeterminate tomatoes at least 2 to 3 feet of space between plants, and 3 to 4 feet is even better. Determinate varieties can be a little closer, about 18 to 24 inches apart. I know it looks like a lot of empty space early in the season, but trust me, by midsummer those plants will fill in beautifully. If you are working with a small garden, it is much better to grow 3 properly spaced tomato plants that each produce a heavy crop than to squeeze in 6 plants that all underperform. Staking or caging your tomatoes also helps by keeping the growth vertical and maximizing your available space. Quality over quantity is the name of the game here. Coming in at number 5 is a mistake that a lot of well-intentioned gardeners make, and that is over-fertilizing with nitrogen. When you give your tomato plants too much nitrogen, you get big, lush, gorgeous-looking plants with tons of dark green foliage. And that sounds great, right? Except there is a major problem. All that nitrogen pushes the plant to prioritize leaf and stem growth over flower and fruit production. You end up with the most beautiful tomato plant on the block that barely produces any tomatoes. It is incredibly frustrating because you think you are doing everything right. The key is to understand that tomatoes need balanced nutrition and their needs change throughout the season. Early on, when the plant is establishing itself, a balanced fertilizer is fine. But once you see flowers forming, you want to shift to a fertilizer that is lower in nitrogen and higher in phosphorus and potassium. Look for tomato-specific fertilizers with a ratio like 5-10-10 or similar, where the first number, nitrogen, is the lowest. Avoid heavy doses of high nitrogen fertilizers like fresh manure or lawn fertilizer once your plants are in the flowering and fruiting stage. Side dress with compost, use a balanced organic tomato fertilizer, and let the plant put its energy into producing fruit instead of leaves. You will notice a real difference in how many tomatoes your plants set once you get the feeding right. The sixth mistake is the one I mentioned at the beginning, and it is ignoring blossom end rot until it is too late. If you have ever picked a tomato that looked perfect on top, but had a dark, sunken, rotten-looking patch on the bottom, that is blossom end rot, and it is heartbreaking. A lot of gardeners see it and immediately think it is a disease, but it is not. Blossom end rot is a calcium deficiency in the developing fruit, and here is the part that surprises most people. It is almost never caused by a lack of calcium in the soil. Most garden soils have plenty of calcium. The real culprit is inconsistent watering. Calcium is transported through the plant by water. When the soil goes through cycles of too dry and then too wet, the plant cannot move calcium to the fruit fast enough, and the blossom end breaks down. So the fix is not to start dumping calcium supplements on your garden. The fix is to maintain steady, consistent soil moisture. Water deeply and regularly and mulch heavily to keep that moisture level as even as possible. If you are growing in containers, this is especially important because pots dry out much faster than garden beds. Blossom end rot is most common on the first few fruits of the season when the plant is still establishing its root system and water uptake is inconsistent. The good news is that once you stabilize your watering, the later fruits almost always come in clean. If you do want to add calcium as insurance, work some crushed eggshells or garden lime into the soil at planting time. But remember, consistent water is the real solution. The seventh and final mistake that is destroying your tomato harvest is failing to rotate your crops from year to year. This is a mistake that catches up with you over time, and by the time you notice the damage, it can be a real uphill battle to fix. When you plant tomatoes in the same spot year after year, the soil becomes depleted of the specific nutrients tomatoes need, and more importantly, soil-borne diseases and pests build up to devastating levels. Fusarium wilt, verticillium wilt, root knot nematodes, and other tomato-specific problems live in the soil and get worse with each consecutive year of planting tomatoes in the same spot. The solution is crop rotation. Ideally, you should wait at least 3 years before planting tomatoes or any member of the nightshade family like peppers, eggplant, and potatoes in the same location. Move your tomatoes to a different bed or a different section of your garden each season. If you are limited on space and only have one raised bed, refresh the top several inches of soil each year with fresh compost, and consider growing a cover crop like crimson clover in the off-season to improve soil health. You can also grow tomatoes in large containers with fresh potting mix each year to completely sidestep the soil disease problem. Rotation is one of those boring, behind-the-scenes practices that does not get a lot of attention, but it is one of the most powerful things you can do to keep your tomato plants healthy and productive for years to come. Do not skip it. All right, now here's a bonus tip that is going to change the game for you. When you transplant your tomatoes into the garden, bury them deep, really deep. Take your transplant and strip off all the lower leaves, leaving just the top 2 or 3 sets of leaves. Then dig a hole deep enough to bury 2/3 of the stem underground. Every single one of those tiny hairs along the buried stem will develop into new roots. This gives your tomato plant a massive, robust root system that can access more water, more nutrients, and anchor the plant more firmly against wind and heavy fruit loads. A bigger root system means a stronger plant, and a stronger plant means more tomatoes. You can also plant them sideways in a trench if your soil is shallow. Dig a horizontal trench about 6 inches deep. Lay the stem in the trench with just the top cluster of leaves sticking up above the soil, and the buried stem will root along its entire length. The top will naturally curve upward toward the sun within a few days. I have used this technique for years, and the plants that get deep planted consistently outperform the ones that are planted at the same depth they were in the pot. It takes an extra 2 minutes at planting time and makes a difference you can see all season long. Thanks for sticking around to the end. If you are serious about turning your kitchen scraps into a real producing garden, I would encourage you to check out the guide I put together. It is called the 30-Day Kitchen Scrap Garden Protocol. It is everything I have figured out about kitchen scrap gardening, laid out in a day-by-day plan you can start right away. It covers which scraps are genuinely worth regrowing and which ones to skip. It gives you the complete setup method, so nothing is left to chance. And it includes the full 30-day schedule, so you always know exactly what comes next. There are 2 easy ways to get it. The first is to click the link in the description right below this video. Just scroll down a little, and you will see it. The second way, if you are watching on a television or a computer screen, is to take out your phone, open up your camera like you are going to take a picture, and hold it up to the QR code you see on screen right now. A little link will pop up at the top of your phone screen. Just tap that, and it will bring you right to the guide. No typing, no searching. Either way works. I think it is the best investment you can make in your garden this year. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Now get out there and grow something amazing.